gable end have basically fallen through the loft, through the ceiling, and missed 2 children in a bed. I think since Grenfell, the compliance has become far stricter than it had ever been before.
Some of the worst builders in the country are the big volume house builders. And the idea that, say, only 1 in 20 or 1 in 100 houses on an estate is inspected thoroughly. Hi guys, thanks for joining us at Pillars of Property podcast. This is our second podcast, which is brilliant. We've got Mehrdad here, who's an engineer, and Mark, who's a builder. Building and property generally has changed a lot in the last 5 years. What do you think have been the biggest changes over those last few years?
I think the cost of the construction has definitely increased within the past 3 years. The cost of labour, the materials, logistics, and looking more at the carbon footprint and the impact that's going to have on our society and our buildings as such.
Yeah, fantastic. And do you think that's a trend that's going to carry on? Do you think build costs will carry on, or are they tailing off a little bit, do you think?
I think something's going to have to happen with respect to the cost can't keep escalating in a way that it is, because it's becoming unaffordable for people to carry out extensions and loft conversions on their own properties to achieve the appreciation and the value in their property. So something will have to change in order for that to continue and allow us to continue.
Yeah, I would agree with that actually, because that's one thing we're finding, even here in the southeast, because if build cost hits me like 3,000 a square metre, they're already 2.5 plus, aren't they?
Yes.
A lot of the values, the GDV values, even in the southeast, or parts of the southeast, should I say, are only about 3,000 to 4,000 anyhow, until you get in the real prime areas. So nobody will build anything. So that has a push down effect on land value, residual land value.
Yes.
So what we're finding is anybody who pays too much for land in the first place, they are pretty much screwed from day one. It's not going to stack up. There'll be no profit margin there of anything. And it's certainly, we're finding that our most bullish clients are people who build to hold. So they'll build a block of flats and hold it because they love doing rentals, or they might translate into a stronger market in maybe 8 years' time or 10 years' time and get a little bit of capital growth. But certainly that combination of high build cost and, I mean, we're not in a recession by any stretch of the imagination, but it is a quiet market. The estate agents find things very quiet. So an estate agency that used to sell, say, 25 houses per month, they're now selling 4. So the turnover's not there. So it's a flatlining market. Build costs have been inching up. And it's quite a difficult situation, really, isn't it?
It is, and people are trying to see the value in moving to a bigger property against extending what they currently have, because the cost of everything has gone up so much. They have to weigh up, obviously, their options and what they're going to get at the back end of any project.
Yeah. And aside from the build cost, do you find the compliance side is harder as well in terms of paperwork and keeping tabs of all that side of things?
I think since Grenfell, the compliance has become far stricter than it had ever been before. But I think it's a good thing. I think everybody knows now what needs to be done, who by, and how. This allows everyone to be singing off the same hymn sheet, but also to achieve the final goal. So I think it's a good thing. I don't think compliance and health and safety should be disregarded in any respect at all.
No, I would agree with that. I mean, I'm hopeful that it'll actually drive poor operators out of the industry, which is going to be a good thing for all of us, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah. What do you think, Mehrdad? What do you think are the biggest changes over the last few years?
Obviously, the build cost has gone up because of the labour cost, like Brexit happened. But as you said, paperwork is a lot more now. Is building safety acts or building regulations. Now you need principal designer for building regulations. There's a lot more professional work you need to do just to complete that. But obviously it's more cost for construction. But at the same time, the quality of construction is higher. So when you compare all the new builds now compared to 5 years ago, you might think, oh, now it's more expensive. But at the same time, in longer term, it might be cheaper for you because more durable building, less cost of energy you are paying for that. It's more quality, so possibly a little larger houses at the same time. So like people just paying possibly a lot more for a new build property, but at the same time they are not paying a lot for energy. They are not paying a lot for sound insulation or stuff like that. So longer term, it's going to be just boosting the business, I think, construction.
Yeah, good point, actually. Actually buying a better product in some ways and lower utility bills because of the extra insulation. It's a good point about thinking about workmanship as well, because I know some very good building control officers, and they say at the risk of getting shot by somebody that some of the worst builders in the country are the big volume house builders. And the idea that, say, only 1 in 20 or 1 in 100 houses on an estate is inspected thoroughly, So the idea that every house should be inspected and monitored thoroughly with paper trails and golden thread and everything, I think is fantastic. So where you'd expect to find in a cavity lots of insulation, you might find a newspaper down there or a couple of cigarette fag ends, which is not acceptable at all. And you're shaking your head like you can't believe it. So very often it's the smaller and medium-sized builders who are more meticulous and more conscientious, and some of the bigger ones and the big volume house builders who are less conscientious. So it's not just a small versus big thing. Everybody has been raising their game and needs to raise their game. But yeah, very good point about the quality of the product. And going back to what I was saying about insulation, I mean, fuel poverty is a big thing for the country, isn't it? People spending a really high proportion of their take-home pay on fuel bills is outrageous, really. So the more we can do to address that, the better,
Yeah. So then a lot more like a profit when you're just going to just a design work. It's just helping like people just when you spend more, invest more on them construction, you're just distributing like money around all like businesses involved in that construction stage. Though shorter term, obviously, it's just more money you're just spending for investment, so it's not much cash flow in the whole industry. But after a few years, people have money now just to buy, just going back old construction at the same time. And for the other industries, say for example NHS, you're not having that problem because of the moss or like damp issues or stuff like that.
Yeah.
Or like fire issues, you don't have that much fire issues anymore. So that's helping for the whole country and just boosting the economy.
Yeah, you're right. It's a big social gain, isn't it?
Yeah.
By avoiding those kinds of issues in the first place. Speaking of what can go wrong, have any of you got any nightmare projects that you remember from the past? Obviously, you can remain completely anonymous. Nobody will be named, none of the guilty or anything. But what are the? I say, do keep it anonymous for heaven's sakes. But what's the worst projects that you've had to work on or go in and save and salvage?
So most of for me, most of the jobs gone wrong. It was mainly because of lack of communications. So, for example, one of the jobs we had it was a very simple job, like just a new garage for like a small, like a single dwelling house. So the whole cost of construction was about like I think that's with £12,000, something like that. But because of the incompetency of the health and safety execution, so from health and safety from the council, they stopped the job, and because she didn't realize how to like manage the job, she just misunderstood the job, stopped the job, and then asked for a lot more paperwork, which is not proportionate to the size of the construction. Sent more than 15,000 invoices to the clients for all the paperwork, and then stopped the job for about 6 months and caused it more health and safety issues. And then we had to get involved with like a dispute issues, and then going to court, and then just we sorted out. Okay, it was the issue from health and safety executives from that part. So this incompetence is coming from lack of possibly knowledge or education or training, and also lack of communication, because she could have maybe just communicated to the engineer, to the builder, contractor, and the client, and then find a quick solution for whatever she has concerns about that. But obviously she didn't. She chose to go like a straight to paperwork, sending invoices, stopping the job without having like a proper reasons. And then their engineer was kind of quite a graduate engineer, not suitable for the level of the job. So that was one experience we had a couple of years ago, and this is really just gave me like that insight. You will have to really just keep the communication at the highest level. Doesn't matter how small the job, because like you might want to invest like £12,000, and then they were sending you additional invoice of £15,000, the whole job gone. But luckily we didn't have to pay that because we proved that all of them were just mistakes from the health and safety executors.
Interesting. You've hit something really important there, which is the idea of bread and butter jobs, isn't it? I guess because we're all in the property industry as well in our own right. I guess a good analogy would be solicitors with conveyancing, because they just charge a few £100 or maybe £1,000 to do conveyancing. They put their more junior people on it. For example, I know a solicitor who sues solicitors who screwed up conveyancing or not noticed something in the title. And because they're putting their more junior people on it, they regard it as bread and butter. It's exactly what you're talking about. So if you do a small, cheap project and don't bring the same level of due care and attention and diligence and the pursuit of excellence, which we three always talk about, to that job, then you shouldn't be doing it. So I guess if you want to use a sort of cheesy analogy, if you like, if you're doing a bread and butter job, make sure it's well resourced. You've got to bring the same level of professionalism to a small job as to a larger job.
Yeah, that's an important point. But when you're just looking with like public authorities, and then they are not really, most of them, not all of them, but the one from health and safety, possibly, they are self kind of authority for them, so they are not accountable to people, and then the panel is just internal panel. It's quite difficult, really. So you might have to go like to MPs saying, "Oh, we have the issue with that authority." It's quite difficult, which is the larger scale. But yeah, you're 100% right. That you need just to resource something like suitable for the level of the job.
Absolutely, and if you're not comfortable with something, then actually flagging it as an issue, make sure there's a paper trail that you were not comfortable with the way the whole thing was set up, But certainly having a strong team in place is essential these days, isn't it? You need to have a really strong team in every discipline, and so the communication, tying it all together. What do you think, Mark? What's one that you remember that was a nightmare job?
It's a horror story in the sense that it was a property that was a rental property, and what had happened is, previous to the landlord buying the property, the chimney breast was taken out in the living room and the bedroom above, but it was just rested on timbers up in the loft space. What happened, I still to this day can't answer, but basically the chimney stack and the gable end had basically fallen through the loft, through the ceiling, and missed two children in a bed. But it basically covered the doorway, so we had to smash the door to get in and get the children out. But how it didn't, not even a bit of mortar or a bit of brick, stone, or anything hit one of those children. How it happened, I couldn't answer. But then you'd think that somewhere along the line, someone would have noticed that the chimney breasts had been taken out. They weren't supported correctly. Not even a gallows bracket, not even a beam. It's just literally a bit of ply there to try and stop it. And I don't even think it was proper ply. I think it was an old cabinet door that they'd rested that
Put
on.
under the chimney stack.
Under the chimney stack, yeah. So how that happened, I don't know. It's mad. And like Mehrdad was saying, there's so much sort of legislation, so many people involved in health and safety and for signing things off, but it just needs to be done on one system, like the gas safes are, like the NIC certificates are done. I think health and safety should be like up there, obviously, with all of that, because it is, it could be fatal.
Absolutely, because either somebody was blessed or very lucky that day, otherwise somebody would be in jail.
Definitely.
Quite rightly so, you
Yeah.
know. Just go to show, even on the smallest projects, say like tiniest extension, there's still, if it's done badly, there's still a scope for a lintel or beam to collapse and kill somebody.
Yeah.
And we had a case, again, completely anonymous, as always, where we were doing an extension, and the engineer had not picked up on the fact it was a timber frame building. So he'd got a heavy, he didn't realise at the time, because he'd not inspected properly by opening up, etc. He was specifying a heavy beam, heavy steel beam, OSJ, bearing on some timber frame. And if they built it, fair dues to the contractor for flagging it, but the contractor built it in accordance with the drawings, which in a way they're supposed to do under the golden thread, of course, unless they flag it as a decision changed, then the whole thing would have just crushed. There's no way that would be able to support that OSJ. Just the dead weight of the beam itself that would have damaged that timber frame. But yeah, it's the level of professionalism that's required these days is very high, and I do hope people who do those kind of things do get driven out of the industry, you know.
Yeah.
With that point you raised, I think when then you mentioned that a lot more construction costs going higher, a lot more paperwork now. So that's why they introduced like principal designer to be in all the projects now.
Yep.
I mean, I remember a couple of years ago, even you wanted to just remove like a wall, single beam, stuff like that. You didn't even need an architect or principal designer, but now it's mandatory.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter how small is the job. One professional or even the client need to be principal designer, and then make sure health and safety, temporary work design, everything is in place, which is obviously more expensive. But you used to pay, I don't know, maybe £1,000 for single beam, but now you have to pay £3,000, like 300% more. But at least you're not going to have the problem, something like that. So it's just spreading the cost over the whole nation.
So the paperwork and the compliance can be as expensive or more expensive than the beam itself.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. But the onus is then on everybody rather than trying to pinpoint the blame onto one person.
Yeah. Well, we should be open. We should share in the industry, definitely. You know, obviously it's quite litigious, but even the word design, it takes on such prominence these days under PD, doesn't it? Under building regs PD. Did you design this? Yes or no? And people trying to wriggle out of saying they didn't design it. It came from a product manufacturer, or it was recommended by somebody else, or somebody else designed it. But yeah, the whole thing around design is really prominent these days, isn't it?
Yes, it is, yeah.
And we had one, it wasn't a disaster as such, or a nightmare job, but it's the thing you don't want to hear, you know. We had a project where we were working with engineer, and they allocated the office junior. So he was fresh out of school, you know. He said, "This was really exciting. I've never worked on anything like this before." And that is not really what you want to hear from your engineer. That's not what you want to hear from your engineer at all, is it? But the idea of, I mean, there's 3 levels of competency, aren't there? I think it's experience, qualification and training, specialist training. So you hope on any project, a bit like the olden days with apprenticeships and things, you know, you'd hope on any project there'd be a strong team, you know, good companies that are experienced in that work, people who are fully qualified and trained and specifically experienced in that kind of work as well. And you'd also hope, if there is somebody junior there, you'd hope that somebody very senior, you know, very, very close to them, or even a middle sort of ranking professional with somebody senior close to them, because you can't go allocating things, you know, the exposure, if you like, to that company, but purely allocating a junior to a job is horrendous, really, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, picking up on what we were saying about having senior people working alongside more junior people, what do you think about the apprentice system and how it used to be and how it is now?
Yeah, the idea of apprentices is a brilliant way to bring the youth and the unskilled people into our industry. They can learn the right ways of doing things whilst working alongside skilled and trained professionals. So it's a good thing to have people coming into our industry that are keen, eager and willing to work. The cost of an apprentice has changed somewhat with the minimum wage going up and the cost that an employer will incur now because of having an apprentice against having a trained or skilled person. So it is a difficult scenario where you have to sort of choose what direction you're going to be going in as a business. But as far as construction goes, there are a lot of young people that are willing to learn the way of construction, and hopefully that will continue. So we've had a few good apprentices that have come through training with us. We have retained them, and we would look to take more on in the future. We just need to have good people around them so that you can find their key skills and what brings them on. When an apprentice comes on with us, we'll always ask them what their preferred or desired trade would be. And if they say they want to be a plasterer, we would put them with like ground workers, with the chippies, with the dry liners, so they can see every aspect of the build that's done before they get involved. We'll even put them with the decorators so they can see how the plaster needs to be done before they can get on the trowel themselves. It gives them an idea of what the whole process is. But then by the time they've actually got on to doing what they think they want to do, they've actually fallen in love with doing something else. People have come to us not being able to do anything and then gone off as skilled trades like a carpenter, plasterer, decorator. So it can only be good for the industry.
Excellent. Yeah, because obviously we need fresh blood. Otherwise, the trades will die out.
Yes.
I don't think that will happen, partly because of salaries these days. Because the old if there was any stigma between white collar and blue collar workers, then obviously somebody on a building site can easily earn 60 or 70,000 pounds a year these days, where somebody in an office might be earning 40 or 45,000. So it's better to have a job with a trade.
Yes.
Certainly with a trade rather than labouring. Obviously, you need a good tradesman. I mean, some of the brickies in central London are now on £800 a day, which is quite a decent income, isn't it?
It is.
And actually, if they're laying 800 bricks a day, it's £1 a brick for the laying, which is incredible. And a lot of the decent bricks are about £2 each. So you're talking £3 a brick, £2 for the brick and £1 to lay it. But certainly that you'd imagine that would draw people into the trade. And the other good thing, of course, is seeing more females at trades these days, which you didn't see so much of, say, 10 or 20 years ago. It's fantastic to see more females in the market. And I know somebody who runs a big HGV business, and there's lots and lots of female HGV drivers these days. And she was saying there weren't so many of those 10 or 20 years ago. But it's fantastic. But I think having a high income, added to which, of course, it's one thing that cannot be replaced by AI. If you're using your hands on a building site, things can be manufactured off-site with modern methods, but you'll still need people, you'll still need tradesmen, and tradeswomen, of course, on site actually doing things which can't be replaced by AI.
That's true.
Which is brilliant, isn't it? Yeah. What's your experience of having younger people?
I can't wait to replace robots with builders anyway. With apprenticeship, I think we had quite very good experience, to be honest, like in the last 2-3 years. So we had 2-3, like about 16, 17 years old, just joined us for experience week or like a few months. And one of them was quite very good, and then fast learners, and then very clever. So we just offered him like a quite full-time job. It really depends on more like your natural personality. If you're into that job, you're enjoying that, and you have a good background, especially in mathematics or physics, then you enjoy it. And then if you're good with computer, you learn the software, and then you have a good communication, so you can learn. So it's easy for you. But obviously the cost is now based on the minimum wage now, which is quite a lot more expensive, especially for like professional companies like us. Our main cost is just the salaries we are paying. So when you're just increasing the minimum wage, it's just all directly increasing. Like for example, the contractors, maybe the main cost is the cost of materials or like health and safety. And then, yes, a big portion is the cost of labor or cost of the professionals as well. But for us, the main cost is the professional fee or the salaries we're paying. But that could be challenging for both sides because, for example, I had one of my friends wanted to send her son to like an experience for 3-4 months to a mechanical company, but she was struggling to find a company because now you have to pay actually like I think about £12 per hour or something like that, and no company wants to do that because you can't really actually get any like commercial benefits from apprenticeship, and then now you're paying for that, so it's not really attractive for anyone. That could be a challenge for everyone, especially for young girls, because they struggle to join into the industry and then learn a little more. And from the other side, people in business, they don't want to invest for no reason. I mean, it's more like charity work, if I'm just saying in plain English. And at the same time, we have issues with the additional costs for NHS costs or national insurance. You have to pay £1,000 per employees per year additional, which is like, imagine if you have like, I don't know, 20 people working for you, like £20,000 per year. It's not really cheap. And from the other side, you have agreement with the Labour government in India saying, "Oh, no payment for like Indian income." So that's quite like a little bit discrimination, I believe, in my opinion.
Interesting. I think the thing is that as well, that probably exerts upward pressure on the salaries of everybody else, because people chat over lunch, people chat in the tea room, don't they, in the coffee room. So if somebody just started on a salary of X and somebody else has been there 5 or 6 years and they're on barely much more than that, then it exerts upward pressure on everybody's salaries, everybody's overheads, doesn't it?
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And it's just making everything less secure for future, because whoever wants to do investment now, they are a little bit uncertain about like the next 2-3 years. So if they spend for any kind of investment now, and then if it doesn't work, they are just paying a lot more for salaries. There's a lot more risk on that, and obviously a lot more commitment when it comes to paying for the taxes, national insurance, and anything like that, PAYE, and anything like that is going to be a lot more expensive. So it's challenging a bit.
It is hard. I mean, it's certainly not, to be fair to you, Mark, as a contractor, it's certainly not builders profiteering at all. There's lots of increased costs, even things like timber, unless I'm wrong. Timber is now more than twice as expensive as it used to be, isn't it?
If not more. Even if you look pre-COVID, a bag of plaster, you're looking at about £3 in 2019. You're looking now between £10 and £12, depending on where you're buying it from. So the cost has increased, and that's just on one particular product within the wide variety that we actually use. So timber, paint. Screws is another one, but anything silicon based, obviously, because of the war that had happened, obviously, in Russia, Ukraine, that's driven the prices up there. Anything that comes from China and all the taxes that are being added, obviously with the war of taxes as such. So yeah, we're sort of in the middle of everything, just trying to get our job done and get the client in their home and being able to enjoy that space.
Yeah, I think that's important for people to recognise that the margins are not going up.
No.
If anything, they're getting squeezed. And some builders that have been around for 100 years are going bust, aren't they? I mean, it happens every year, every few months, which is an insight into the fact it's not contractors profiting. And even things like the building regs, So say, a common example I use is insulation. So say a sheet of insulation, which was 25 quid a few years ago, because it's doubled in price and you need more of it. That's going to be 75 quid or 85 quid. So it's gone from 25 to 85 just in 3 or 4 years.
And before, we used to put insulation between joists and between rafters. Now we're doing that, but then we're overboarding as well. So the thickness of insulation has definitely increased considerably from how we used to build. But when you look at the saving you're going to make on your energy bills, it's going to be huge. But when we do any projects that we spec before we even get started, we look to overspec the insulation, the soundproofing, and in the rental market, we believe that helps you retain your tenants for longer. So you've got less void periods, you've got less disruption between tenants, less arguments happening. So we do it for a reason. It costs more initially, but to do that at the time is X amount rather than having to do it once you've decorated and having to take door frames, skirtings off, and having to do it retrospectively is a lot cheaper to do it initially, which is why we do that.
Yeah, and just being careful, like lapping, DPMs and vapor barriers and things, doing everything properly the first time around.
Yes,
it is very important.
Yeah, especially the way that people use spaces now. A lot more people tend to dry close indoors, so you've got to be mindful of that extra humidity cause from the off. At least that way, you've created a way that airflow is going to happen like better, ventilation's happening, and these are all regs that are coming in, bit by bit within the building regs that we have to work to. So it can only be good for the quality of the build for years to come.
Absolutely, for the occupants for sure, and the good of that building. I mean, one example I like to use, going back to DPMs and vapor barriers, is for real cutting edge schemes, is when you cut a socket through a vapor barrier. That has to be made good afterwards, But a common sense approach, if it works with a house and the size of the spaces, if you like, in that house or flat or even commercial premises, is try and locate those sockets on the internal partitions. Don't put them on the external walls.
Exactly.
And then you can avoid that problem by having to cut through that vapor barrier. So sometimes a bit of a common sense approach helps as well, doesn't it?
Plus, by cutting through the vapor barrier and the DPM, you're going to affect the sound test as well on new builds as well, which you have to be mindful of. Everything needs to be sealed up. And then when you're looking at air source and ground source heat pumps, if you've got any air leakage within the building or the fabric of the building, then that's going to cause problems as well.
The performance would be awful.
Yes.
It would compromise everything, really.
Yeah.
What advice would you? I mean, I touched on this in a previous podcast to somebody entering your profession now. What I said in the case of architects is, I guess it's true of you guys as well, is to make sure you're always up to date with the latest developments and the latest trends. So, for example, even AI is very big in architecture right now. We're using AI in 3 or 4 different ways already. But not only that, but design-wise, what clients need, what does the client need from this project? Just keeping your eyes open and not getting set in your ways would be my advice to somebody starting out now. So in other words, you don't leave college and think, yay, I got to the top of the mountain. Then you're sort of plain sailing thereafter. You keep striving. You keep doing your CPDs, not because you have to, because you want to. And I say having your ear to the ground and just going back to what I was saying about being aware of trends. It's so important to be aware of latest trends. So what would you say to somebody starting out as a contractor these days, Mark?
In my opinion, going into any profession, you have to love the industry that you're going to be going into, to be truly passionate about, the drive, the vision that, you're not only working to your own expectations, you've got a client, you've got an architect, you've got structural engineers, health and safety, you've got so many things to consider. So you definitely have to sort of love the industry that you're going into. But something that I find very funny is that, a builder would have to sort of listen and look at what an architect has done and the amount of letters and qualifications they have after their name. Same as a structural engineer, like Mehrdad's got loads of letters. He's got more letters in his name than the alphabet's got. Then you look at health and safety, you look at gas engineers, electricians, the amount of courses, the amount of tests and stuff they have to do. And then on the bottom of all like their drawings or their paperwork, it will say, refer back to the builder. The builder, as in my case, kicked out of school, expelled at the age of 14. So thanks for the pressure that you've all put on us, but we've got your back and we'll get you through this. But yeah, so in all seriousness, you've got to be passionate about what you're doing. You've got to love the job, and the reason my brother and I got involved in construction is it was ingrained in us from our dads and uncles. They're all in the building trade. But it's being able to deliver something and change something for the better and be able to give people a space that, for example, they've never had there before if you build an extension, or making a house more usable by opening walls up. But it seems now that the trend of opening things up seems to be changing somewhat, and people want spaces to be closed off. They want snugs, they want playrooms. So, it's going obviously with the trends and what people want, but being able to deliver them to a certain level of finish.
Yeah, and quality. I mean, what I find, staying on this subject of contractors, is people see these things on television, like Channel 4 cowboy builders or whatever, but the reality, thankfully, about 99% of the time, certainly the projects that we're involved in, is completely different to that. I find that most trades are consummate professionals. They do like to take pride in their work. One thing I really like is if you see a brickie doing block work, and you do see this, and everything is perfect. Like everything's struck beautifully, the mortar joints, all the perpends line up perfectly, and that's going to get covered up. But that person still took pride in their work and did it properly, And the pressure comes, I think, when, say, go back to big volume house builders, sorry to diss them a little bit, but if they're on meterage rates, they're being paid to work as fast as they possibly can and still take pride in their work. There's a bit of a conflict there. And you'd hope that the pride wins through, because I hate to see people who are completely under the cosh against the clock, who still take pride in what they're doing.
Yeah.
So do you find the same thing? I guess you look after all your trades, don't you?
Well, as a rule, we don't work on new build sites. We won't be, doing big site work. It's not in our makeup, and it's not something I believe in. When you're building volume of things like timber frame buildings, which people are taking out 25, 30-year mortgages on, and they're not expected to even last that long. That in my mind is worrying and horrifying. But in our industry, we need to make sure that we're delivering a good project. It needs to be functional, but it needs to be safe. It needs to be done the correct way. Cutting corners doesn't help in any respect, because you always get bitten at the end. Things on projects will no doubt go wrong, especially when you're converting an existing building that was built in a certain way at a certain sort of period of time. To convert that, you're always going to get some slight issues, which are all rectifiable. And you need to make sure that you're delivering to the client what you're saying you're going to and what they're expecting. Things do change along the way, but it's just having that communication and conversation with the client.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. How about you, Mehrdad? What advice would you give to a young engineer just starting out from college?
Before I go to the young engineers, so I think you mentioned about the cost of construction going higher because of, like, for example, insulation or anything like that. I think the biggest gap at the moment is optimization concept. So we don't have that in process at all. Like, in um, some aspect we are using value engineering, but I think in the larger aspect we need to focus on optimization, saying, okay, now we have better insulation, okay, less energy bill, but we are still using the same sort of foundation. So you have larger or wider cavity walls, so you will need wider foundation just to cover it, but it's not really saving or carbon footprint, or not really saving the cost, or you're just using more expensive lintels now. Everything is more expensive. But if we just sit down, just doing taking care as a whole, from like architectural aspects, construction, structure engineering, mechanical, everything, just make sure, okay, we are increasing insulation, but how can we reduce the cost of foundation without adding cost? Um, I think optimization is missed in the industry because all the clients want to keep the professional fee cheap and fast. Um, Nobody wants to extension and then spending, like, I don't know, a month on the design process, just making sure everything is just going to be done smoothly. Like, we don't want to see on the drawing, oh, everything's just back to the builder. But if we just complete like all the site investigations before the contractor is involved, and then if you just do all the optimization, making sure we are using like low carbon foundations, or like as small as possible foundations, everything like that, then you might pay more for professional fees, but at the end your construction cost will drop a lot more, and then your contractor is happier because everything is like predicted at the design stage, and then you don't have any problem with the question. And if you allow for like AI design, like a BIM modeling, everything, that you already have answer for your RFIs even before start of construction. That's the big gap that which we are doing for some of the commercial projects, but it's not really for the smaller project. For the younger engineer, I would suggest like anyone like starting at the age of, I don't know, 18, 17 or anything like that. The best way they can just go up the ladder is just having the skills, and it could be any sort of skills, like soft skills or hard skills. If you know any software, being proficient at any like AutoCAD or Revit or any like industrial software, or if you're good at like AI or your stuff communication skills, teamwork, anything like that. It's just helping you just to promote yourself a lot faster. Um, Obviously, qualification like university qualification, college is helpful. I wouldn't say this is the whole. Yeah, I've studied a lot in the university, but even I studied like 12 years in the university, I still believe like soft skills is more important than your qualification or like technical skills, because if you're a fast learner, then you learn a lot over a year more than like someone, okay, they have like master degrees but they still like very rigid, they are not flexible, they are not learning, they are not good with software. So all these skills just helping you to manage your time and manage the expectation. So rather than finishing a project in 2 weeks, which is possibly not very efficient, low quality, you still can do in 2 weeks or even shorter, but a lot better quality. So just the value of the job is a lot more than whatever you're just getting paid.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I think what Mehrdad's trying to say, that it doesn't matter how many letters you've got after your name. If you've got common sense and you're streetwise, then you're up there. And
Well, my letter is also important. So.
I was feeling good for a second, but just a quick one on what Mehrdad was saying with regards to like the foundation and stuff. We've invested money in ground screw piling, and that's definitely going to be the way forward, where you're driving screw piles to a certain Newton force to allow you to build off of that with timber framed RSJs or metal framed structures, and you don't have the cost of removal and disposal of spoil, and you don't have the cost of concrete as well, and downtime as well is reduced massively. So
And better for the planet as well, of course.
definitely, it's been embraced like quite highly. So watch this space.
Fantastic. Okay, guys. Well, thank you so much for that. We've got some great insights from the industry. and obviously the three of us could chat forever around the industry. But thank you very much for your time.